Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
Veterans are the lifeblood of American freedom, serving in some of the harshest situations to secure that freedom across the globe. This is the Lounge with Legend show, celebrating their transformation from battlefield to business. The Lounge with Legend show with Marty the Moac Martinez and James A. Felts, a.k.a. Spartan 6.
Bam! We even got it right, lined up on left and right. Like
I can't believe you did it right that time. That's amazing.
It only took me 10 weeks.
Oh, you're a quick learner.
I'm a quick study. So what is going on, James, with episode 10, the one with the BourBiz King?
Scott. I tell you what, it's, we just had an amazing conversation right before the show even started, right?
Josie, I had to cut them off. We were in the green room. They were talking about everything. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to shut up and just watch them, let them talk.
You got to be impeccable with your words. So before we start the show, I'm going to ask Scott, when he gets on the stage here, once again, let's put some pressure. So maybe he can give me that Mets jersey he has hanging behind him. I got to get the World Series Mets jersey signed, autographed. Anyway, let's work on that for me. Help me, please.
So since our last episode and this episode, what's happened?
Well, there's a lot of things going on here personally. This will be the last time I'm calling from this office location. We're moving out. This is my last, stream from here. So I'm excited moving forward and getting to a new location. So eager about that. What about you, Marty? What have you been up to?
It's been a good week. We had Women's Veterans Day on Saturday, celebrating our female veterans, which is near and dear to my heart, being former dual military couple. Now I'm an Army spouse with my wife, who's a battalion commander. So always want to celebrate our female veterans. And then we had a Flag Day, Army birthday. It's been patriotic. We've been wearing red, white, and blue all week. And then the other thing is, this weekend I was able to go to from episode 3, Clark Cooper. We went out to their place for their bicentennial celebration, which I was trying to explain what that was to my daughter. So she was telling everybody, we're going to a house party. I'm like, yeah, I guess technically we're celebrating the house. So it's a house party, but it was nice. It was nice to be out. I know Scott and them, they just had a huge BourBiz event in San Antonio. And so with us, it was nice to be back with people with the mask off and networking and everything. But I don't know about you, James. I think that I'm rusty on the physical networking game. So I was pretty exhausted afterwards because it was a lot of talking to people. And it's like afterwards, I'm like, good gosh.
Marty, I think we're on our 10th or so episode. I think people know you like to talk. I don't think that's true.
Well, I was tired. I'm just, but we know my daughter, she was actually the hit with her pig running around. More people were saying, hey, bye Isabella, bye Mary. Mary's name of her pig, and bye her dad. And I was like, damn, she's networking DC like nobody's business. I like it.
And that's the thing about, Scott Davidson. He's figured that out, how to master that. And those are some of the questions I want to ask him about networking today. I actually, Marty, I had to take notes. I know you're going to find that hard, but I had to actually write out everything that he does. I mean, I was looking at specifically at everything that he volunteers, his time and experience to. He's a presenter and panelist with the federal publication seminars. He's done class presenter and trainer with the VA system and Institute for Veterans and Family or veterans and their military families. He's involved with the American Legion in the past. He does co-founder of the Veteran Success Resource Group, which started BourBiz, which you were talking about.
Right.
He's on the leadership council of the Washington Football Team Charity Foundation. I mean, where does it stop? I mean, I tell you, it's amazing when you see someone living a life of service and putting that service first and leading with value.
No, absolutely. And that's why, when we were going through a list of everybody we want on here, it was like, Scott Davidson was one of the people that we have to have on. So enough about us jaw jacking. Let's bring him on, but and bring him in. So here he comes. Yeah.
He messed it up. See, I knew he was. I knew he messed it up. He's got to put himself in the spotlight there. You know that, Scott.
I like. Yeah, we could all just stack up on the right side if you want. Like we're going into a door somewhere. It's good. We'll let Marty go first, though.
Of course, number one man. Love it.
Yeah, just pie the corner, Marty. We'll be all right.
No, Scott, we appreciate you coming on this show, and like James was saying, all the things that you've done, but more important than that, because there's a lot of people that have done a lot for themselves, but the fact that you've given back so much. Let's bring it all the way back to your journey into the Army. What was that? When did you come in, and what was that call to serve? Because you started off, you're like me, you started off enlisted, and then we went to, as some would say, the dark side. And
I'm surrounded by Mustangs. I don't know how to act.
Yeah, I know. I caught a lot of stuff for that when I went first time was actually RTB. I went as cadre, and there was a lot of my Ranger buddies from when I was listed. I'm like, what the hell? You sell out? You did it for the money, didn't you? I'm like, well, let's pay a little bit different over here as a captain. But so yeah, but tell us about your journey, brother.
So for me, it's really, it comes back to why I wanted to join was I was influenced by my grandfather. My grandfather was an amazing man. He died at a young age. I remember him though. He died when I was 10. And I know why, really what happened with him, but I was influenced by my grandfather. He actually was on Omaha Beach. He was landed that day on D-Day. He was wounded 6 times in World War II. As crazy as it sounds, what we did was we found all his records after the fact when he passed away. My uncle actually started to gather stuff, but we knew he was seriously hurt growing up because he had a lot of ailments. But he absolutely influenced me. I want to tell a great story because it's a story that we're trying to. I always like to tell just because of my grandfather, but it's an amazing story because it talks about the responsibility of individuals, soldiers for that matter, back in World War II, what it looks like, right? At the lowest level. My grandfather was an engineer, right? Combat engineer. And he was great with demo. Like he would just blow up all kinds of shit apparently, right? And he was just good with it. But he was just, he was a working man. His job before he joined, he joined, by the way, he didn't get drafted. He joined because he wanted to, he enlisted because he knew it was coming. He wanted to serve his country. He moved gravestones. That's what he did. He actually picked them up and he would move them like the headstones, right? And then he would deliver them. Back then, that's what they did. They didn't have that much heavy equipment. It would be a manual thing. So he was a strong guy essentially. But with him being an engineer, this is the crazy story. What he did was we found the citation. One of the things that he did before he landed on Omaha Beach in the winter of 1944. He went behind enemy lines with the French resistance. And what they would do, he also spoke, by the way, he spoke German fluently. He understood it and he could speak.
Oh, wow.
And that was obviously an incredible trait to have. But what happened was they would take him, and during the day, what they do is they would identify at night, they'd have positions by the different German, points of interest. They would bury him in the snow, the French would, at night before the sun came up. And he would sit and listen, like was an LPOP, and basically gather intel during the day. And then when the sun goes down, because it was short days, it was the winter, he would go out and put demolition charges and blow up different emplacements before that. And then before the sun comes up, they bury him back in the snow like an Eskimo cave, and then they would bring him out. And then he did that until when the snow started melting, and then they brought him back past France, and then they put him ready to go for D-Day. He did the landing. That's crazy. Like, he was an E2. He was an E2. He was an E2. Think about that. My E2s can't even fucking drive out of the goddamn motor pool without hitting the goddamn, the concrete embankment. This guy's doing this as an E2 without anybody to report to but like the French resistance. Think about it. I mean, it's
I know. It's like when I was an E2, I was strongly considered a 25% interest loan on a Corvette that I couldn't afford. Where
did we go wrong? I'm just saying, like, holy cow. I always think of that story. It drives me nuts. Oh my God. But he was an inspiration. And so the two things that really changed it for me was always growing up with him when he died. He always, I always held him that high regard. But then really the tipping point for me was Saving Private Ryan, because you got to watch it. And then I realized, going back and reading about him, and I got really interested in my grandfather's service. That changed me. I said, I got to go serve. Right. I feel like I owe it to someone like those men and women who served during that time. I owe it to them. And that's what I did. I had a good job at the time too. I already graduated college. I was working at a bank in New Jersey. I was, this follows me from my career though, but I was an auditor for them. And I woke up one day. I'm like, this is what I want to do. I went right down to this ridiculous, there was like the mall, like all four branches were next to each other, and Staff Sergeant Philip Torado, I'll never forget him because he lied, but I get it.
I got one of those.
Yeah, Staff Sergeant. I don't know what you were, you retired at, but one day we'll cross paths because I got to ask you a question. He was outside smoking a cigarette. And he sees me coming from a mile away, and that was it. And then the rest is history. I actually went quick. It was on Monday. I took the ASVAB Tuesday, MEPS Wednesday, MEPS again Thursday. I was gone Friday, and that was it. And I was gone. And so I jumped on the plane, and then, I was enlisted. I was a signal puke for a little bit, became an NCO. And then I was just like, this is when I found out when he lied to me. I was like, oh, why can't I be an officer coming in? He goes, oh, no, you had to be enlisted first. And then you can apply after 2 years. I'll never forget the story. I go, really? He goes, yeah, 2 years. And I'm like, oh, okay. It wasn't even Google back then. I'm like, all right, that that makes sense to me. What do I know? So as soon as my first unit, I got to my first unit, which was in Fort Huachuca, and we're like, what are you doing here? Like, you can just go be an officer. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? And the first sergeant squared away. He was a great first sergeant. That was it. Put my packet in. It took me a while though, because it's the wheels of the Army. It takes forever. So I actually wound up going to PLDC, get my E5 while I was waiting around because there was a long period of time between those two. Became an NCO. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And in fact, this is the funniest thing too. I got my NCO. I pinned my stripes on. And then a week later, I got my OCS orders, my orders to OCS. And so I was like, all right. But the real quick Mustang story, you guys will laugh at this, how weird it is, especially Marty had mentioned this. So OCS is crazy. I'm sure you guys remember who the Mustangs that went there. I left that duty station. I had to come back. And because it's TDY, right? So I left as an NCO. I came back as a second lieutenant. They had no place to put me. They didn't know because there was no BOQs open apparently, anything like that. And so I was stuck there for 10 days before they could get me back to OBC. And that was a very interesting time because everyone's like, I was drinking with these guys, having the best time. Like, they threw a going away party. And then 3 months later, they're like, you can't, whatever. And I'm like, I still had a good time with them when I got back. It was a great party. But but even the girl I was dating at the time, right? She was also an E5. And I'm like, I guess we're just going to be friends now, huh? And it was like, all right. It was like,
that was easy. That was
yeah.
easy.
Because he was under the impression like, you're never, you're going to come back. You're still going to be an NCO. And I'm like, no, we were dating for a while. I'm like, no, it's gone.
Yeah, we're like, it's not you, it's the Army.
It's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my call to service. Essentially, was my grandfather inspired me, and I will tell you to this day, I love the Army, love the military in general, but I love the Army. I did not want to leave the Army. Wasn't by choice, obviously, when I got hurt, but I was there for well past 20 in my mind, and just because I'm not only I love the people, and people don't get this, I love like the camaraderie, right? I don't have it anywhere else. And people could talk that all they want, but and people could talk about different occupations that have it. There's nowhere else, and you guys know this better than anybody else, where you're literally 24/7 with people in the worst possible situation. Not even talk about war, just to talk about shitty garrison environment, right? But like, you go to the field, you do all kinds of stuff, but like you just have this awesome bond. And, there's no other job in the world or occupation that requires you to live with someone like that and in such close quarters. And then, of course, when you go to the Super Bowl, right, which is basically we go to Iraq or Afghanistan together and legitimately deploy, there's nothing like that experience either. And that kind of leads me to BourBiz, but I never was able to replicate that in anything we've done. For me, that was, at a very important time, and why I dedicate so much, because, and we could talk about this, but one of the things, and you talk about why we give back so much. I give back so much because I was fortunate enough to be in this position that, I created my company and things happened, and, whatever it is. But I always wanted to give back. But the reason I give back so much, especially to the veteran community, I want to, and we do other things, but like focused on military families and veterans, is I want, and this is what I really focus on, E6 and below, right? E6 and below, because wars are fought and won on the backs of E6s and below. I don't care what you say. Go look at every goddamn Valor Medal citation out there. The percentages net out to what that looks like, right? When you look at Valor Medals, actual Valor Medals, right? With anything with a V device on it or associated with a V device, like a Silver Star stuff. I mean, the majority of them are all going to be E6 and below. That's just the way it goes, because those are the war fighters. Right. And the reason I do that in general too is because I want everybody, if I can do it, to come out, and I want them to be good ambassadors, because even if you do your 4 years, you are the ambassador to go back into that service, right? You are the ambassador to go back into the Army or whatever branch you want to, be in, and say, you know what? Because we all joke around about the stupid shit that happens, especially in garrison and things like that. But what we want to say is, I want you to tell the next person, or even if it's your kids or if it's somebody else, you know what? I did have a good experience. Or you know what? When I got out, we took care of each other, right? We still take care of our own after the fact, right? Just like what you guys do, and you want to spread word and resources, the same thing. We're always looking to help each other. I want to see all those good ambassadors coming out from E6 and below. And don't get me wrong, officers and everybody else can do it, but it's the 85% of the people who serve this country fall into that category. Right. And we want them to be able to tell the next person that even if you do 4 years and out, that's good, but do your 4 years, because it's not what you hear. It's not so bad. And it's just, you get so much out of it.
Yeah, that's huge. And along those lines, that's why James and I created Joint Task Force 214, which, for those that aren't, that are new to the show and don't realize what that is James and I creating courses to help veteran entrepreneurs with the growth mindset on, you want to get out and be a veteran entrepreneur, because you literally, like when you're going through a lot of these transition assistance programs, you get like a 3-hour block of instruction. Here's their boots to business, and here you go, have fun. And there's a lot of courses out there that'll teach you about balance sheets and all that. But we also, I think, especially for E6 and below and for company grades, it is mentally, how do I switch? How do I understand the superpowers that I have from the military and capitalize that and get mission focused and business ready as I make that evolution and progression to the next level. But
absolutely. I mean, I know you're going to talk about BourBiz a little bit, but I mean, just going on that, what got my attention immediately was the bar's always open, right? You got an open bar, you have live entertainment, you have award presentations, you have all these giveaways and these conversations. I mean, you're actually opening the doors for these, E6 and below that probably wouldn't have the opportunity to be rubbing elbows with these celebrities, these professional athletes. So, for me, and I know for majority of us, it was about a confidence thing. So I could use your event as a confidence builder. Attend your event. It's free for you military and first responders, I think, and military family members. So you come there, you've already laid out the foundation for them. You've given them the platform. All they got to do is show up and be yeah.
They're great events. I've been to a couple, and they're, I'm fortunate that I live here, stone's throw from Scott here in the DC area, and they're awesome, and even you had a really small one. Was it last November?
Yeah. Just had to do something.
there was not a lot of us there, but it was awesome. We just kept that you're still building the community. Cause like you said, it goes back to that team, and I appreciate it. I have a question for you about BourBiz, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but from this event, what's one of the best compliments you've received from somebody that was unexpected coming out of a BourBiz event?
It saved their life. And this is a big part of why we do what we do. And there's two quotes that came out of it. It saved his life because he was in mental health crisis and he didn't realize where he was at the time in his life. And he's a legit guy, right? Like legit. And, he came up to me. I'll never forget this. And it was the first time I met this gentleman. And we talked it's a crazy atmosphere when you're there. And this happened when we were at the MGM National Harbor. And I recognized some of the telltale signs of what was happening. And I said, you know what? Come here. I go, I want to introduce you to somebody. And I brought him right over to Headstrong. And I go, I think you need to talk to these folks. And then when you're done, come back to me come find me and we'll talk some more. But I want you to just talk to this person here. And it did. He got into treatment right away, and things like that. And, we had a conversation after the fact, and he did say, and I sat and I spent some time with him because I was concerned just because of some of the things that you could tell. And he did. He goes, this, weeks later, he goes, it saved my life. He goes, because I was going down this bad path. And that was important to me, right? Just because we have all these different things here, mental health, entrepreneurship, everything you can think of, right? We want to have a resource for. And that's really what matters. But the other quote that came out was, which I really liked, was someone said to me, it felt like the first time I was back in. He goes, it was the first time I felt like I was back in, and he had been out for so long. And he goes, I don't want to leave. He goes, because it's just, we're all here together. And they felt, and he said it's a safe environment in the sense that we're all like-minded. We all served. And he just was like, there was no animosity. There was nothing there. It was just everybody wanted to talk and have a good time. So those are the two things that always stick out to me. And I hear that more and more now, that they feel like they're back in that moment. And I do, like, you walk around like this in the one we just did in San Antonio. Man, you walk 2 feet, everyone's smiling. Everyone wants to talk to you. Everybody has some type of thing. And you know what the craziest thing is? Regardless of where we go, we all know the same people. Like, we could be in Las Vegas and we're going to run and say, hey, you know so-and-so? And it is amazing how small the Army really is, right? And that was something, I'll give you an example. Medal of Honor recipient Leroy Petrie. He was at our last event. We were talking the night before. Him and I went out and we had some, he wasn't drinking, but we went out to a bar. We were just bullshitting until, God knows, it was 2:00 in the morning, I think. And he started telling me a story about where he was, in Nasiriyah, because he was one of the guys who actually, people may not know this, he was on the Ranger team that went in to get Jessica Lynch out. And I was like, oh, really? I go, oh, we helped with the feint. And because I was attached to the Task Force Tar with the Marines, because we were attached to the 2-8. And they did the feint in Nasiriyah, obviously draw fire across town. People thought something was going on, etc. And I was like, oh, and we just happened to literally be at one point, like probably maybe 100 feet from each other. And it's just the weirdest thing in the world, because this is somebody that we're worlds apart, right? Like in our mind, we are. Yeah. And I'm like, fuck. I'm like, do you remember? And I'm like, because he started describing something to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, do you remember this right here? He goes, I remember. And then he my favorite part of the final story. He goes, yeah. He goes, that was the first time I got to whack somebody with a saw. I was like, you're fucking great. It was one of my favorites, just out of nowhere. I love it. He's like, that was my, he said, that was my first, I got to whack a guy with a saw. It was great. I was like, good for you.
Hey, Scott, we have a question I'll pose in here from Sean Sexton, and it's dealing about, because you deal with a lot of veteran organizations, and what we have is vet on vet crime. And James and I have talked about this, where, hey, you think you're in the fold, you think you're in the brotherhood, sisterhood, the fraternity, whatever it is. How does that happen, and how does this affect the mindset?
Sean, that's a great question. I've dealt with it personally now a couple times, and first off, it's demoralizing because like we talked about before we came on the air, like just because you're a vet doesn't mean you're a good person. Just, if you're a vet, you could be a complete piece of shit. And the reality is this: you gotta learn and you gotta be wary, right? And I hate to have to say that, but I have become more guarded over the years when it comes to doing certain things because I've lived it. I had a ridiculous episode last year. I'm not going to go into details of this. This person was clearly just so grossly unstable. That was just just an arch criminal essentially. Right. And just wreaked havoc on a lot of the things that we were doing. And, in the end, I will tell you, we're still actually, there's this civil case that I can't really talk about. That's why I'm not saying names, but we're still pursuing civil cases. We're trying to find this person so we can serve them. But things like that, it just gives you, but we will pursue things to the full extent of the law. But I will tell you, yes, it's demoralizing, but you got to get past it. We talked about the 80-20 rule, right? 80-20, 8% of people will be good, 20% of people are bad. You just have to learn you're not always going to spot it. You're not going to always, because there's going to be people that are really good at being a fraud, right? Until it's too late. And you think they have good intentions, but they don't. But you just have to be able to, when you do spot it, you have to be able to mitigate the risk very quickly and address it, right? And go through the proper channels. These people will, in the end, they always destroy themselves. That's the best part. Time will always catch up with them. And we found out a lot of things. So, yes, Sean, that's a good question for you. How do you deal with the vet on vet crime? It's rough. And it's rough because, again, it just puts us internally. And it's even worse inside the vet community, man. We tear each other down all the time. But, like, there's some people out there that just take absolute advantage of other veterans, and they're just huge pieces of garbage. But you got to see them for what they are and see that the community, when we are together, there's a lot of good people. But it's not easy. I will tell you, I'm still bitter. But I will feel better when I'm able to finalize some of those cases and then get all the recovery I can, because I will let everybody know this is a good thing just from a law perspective. Your VA and all that stuff is absolutely garnishable. So don't think because you live on certain subsistence from the federal government that we can't take that money from the civil litigation suit. So I just want everybody to know that. So be careful, people who decide to live off of 100% rating and things like that. I can come take that money if I want, especially if you do libelous and defamation stuff. So just wanted to put that out there.
Well, the one thing too, for speaking for myself, and we talked about it, Scott, earlier before we got on, it hurts more. Right. That's the biggest struggle that I see. That's Marty's little high-speed button he's got. But that it hurts more. It's a double-edged sword. It hurts and it cuts a little bit deeper because you put your heart out there and then you find out that it's not exactly how it was presented. So I tell, and Marty and I just say, hey, be real, be who you are. Yeah, right. If you weren't infantry, you weren't infantry. If you weren't a high-speed Marty Martinez, then you weren't.
It's like God was a Godfather too at Fredo. I know it was you, Fredo, right? It's because it's the people that you feel like you can trust. You go to BourBiz and they're excited because it felt like they were back in, and then it gets punched in the face. It does hurt more. And
we do what we need to do, Marty, though, because most of it, once we see any hint of problems, you're out. We will never let you barred from the event from ever, because we don't want bad actors in the space, including, and we do vet. And that, even more so now, even the tables that come in, and we're going to do that even harder now, is that I don't want anybody from a predatory standpoint to come in there, right? I don't want that. We don't want that because listen, I see it all the time. If you're 20 years old, and we all remember this, we make really dumb decisions. And I hate to see some of these companies that go out there and they, everything looks good, but they can manipulate the hell out of you, and they prey on that, on that particular demographic. I hate seeing that. I hate seeing like things like that where I know they go into basic training units or they go into AITs and things like that. And they set up like their table and they're like, hey, I can get you this. I can give you a credit card. Those are terrible things. I don't want to be associated with you in any way, shape, or form. And I really want to educate people because I constantly see it. It's always with money and lending too. I'm not going to say anybody in particular, but it's amazing to see that type of behavior where they're just gutting, E4s and below and things like that. And just they're preying on military spouses and their goodwill and their, maybe their ignorance. It's really disheartening.
Hey, let's go ahead and cut to commercial break. We got Joe here of Maxwell Soaps, veteran-owned company, has was it Maxwell Soaps, right? And so love you too, Joe. And we're gonna go ahead and cut to break. So go ahead and recharge your Black Rifle coffee you got there, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Oh, give me a minute. Sorry.
Or maybe.
My name is Mike Irwin. I'm the founder and the executive director for Team Red, White, and Blue. We're a nonprofit organization on a mission to enrich veterans' lives by forging America's leading veteran health and wellness community. By far, what I'm most excited about in this partnership with BPN and Team RDBB is that both organizations are still just getting started. And so together, through our partnership, as both organizations continue to still grow, we are really excited about reaching many more veterans than we currently have thus far.
There it is. You're watching the Lounge with Legends TV show with your hosts, Marty Martinez and James A. Felts.
Dang it. I
love it when he does that. I love it.
All right. Well, we got to thank our sponsors. Me and James. Footies. Summer here. Get your footies. We got them in dad shape and for the littles. So antimicrobial, anti-skid. And we also had on there Nick Bear, future guest. Wrote his book, 25 Hours in a Day, also Army Ranger. Great book, and proud of that partnership with Team Red, White, and Blue. So
awesome organization. Awesome. Team Red, White, and Blue, amazing.
Absolutely. I remember seeing them at MIC DC, and I was like, man, I don't want to leave his table. It's so awesome just talking to these guys. So
yeah, those guys are great, and they do such great things in the community. And there's a lot of good success stories about people who were kind of down and out from an exercise perspective and really changed their lives with their events. I think it's just awesome what Team Red, White, and Blue does.
Yeah, we need to get them on the show. But all right, so we've talked about BourBiz and kind of the number one thing that came out of it. Now I've got a question, because you deal with, with the Washington football team and Chef Andre Rush and all these larger than life people. Who is or has been the most influential person in your life, and why?
You mean out of just those people?
Out of anybody. It doesn't have to be a big name, but because like I said, I bring up the big names because a lot of people will be like, oh, it's probably this big name person, but it could be.
I think he's a big name. Now, here's what I would say. I think everybody I draw inspiration from all different people, right? So you get to meet with a Chef Andre Rush, and that dude is the most positive guy in the world. I love Chef.
He is.
We spent so much time together for a long time, and we really just, he just has such a good outlook on life, and he makes me tired, which is rare. there because I can go. I mean, him and I there's been, he just doesn't. I mean, people think like it's bullshit and they call him out. He doesn't sleep. No, I can legitimately tell you, I have been on 48-hour sessions with that dude. He didn't sleep, and neither did I. But I'm just saying, as far as like work stuff goes, there was no time to sleep. It was impossible, right? We had maybe an hour and a half downtime, and that's just so people can say whatever they want. So he's inspirational. But I will say the one person that to me is the driving force. What we do is Justin Constantine. So Justin and I, Justin Constantine, and people probably know Justin in general, but the reason why Justin is such an inspirational person is that dude also most positive outlook on life and has taught me so much about resilience and resiliency. Because you look at an individual like himself. First off, people may or may not know that he volunteered for that deployment in Ramadi in 2006. He was a JAG. He was a defense attorney in the JAG Corps for the Marines. What had happened is that they needed focus. It was a surge, right? We all got pulled into it. And for him, they went around to officers in a certain level, I guess in the Marine Corps, and they're like, listen, we have civil affairs team. We need the staff, and we're just going to grab people, literally, we're just, it's going to be voluntold in a second, do it. And so what happened was he volunteered because he didn't want anybody with families to go because he knew they were going to go to Ramadi in like the worst possible freaking area. So that right there tells you what he is, because he was a lawyer. He's an attorney, right? Yeah, he goes through IOBC, their equivalent, whatever the officer basic courses for infantry, in Quantico, and he has that training. But yeah, he volunteered as after sitting and being an attorney for so long, and then of course we know he gets shot in the head by a sniper. Two Marines are killed that day during the same firefight with that sniper. Justin somehow miraculously survives, even though the story's been told many times. I'm not going to go into here, but, he survives, right? He goes through so many surgeries, and it's just horrific. It's a horrific wound. And, in all these years later, now he can add that he's a cancer survivor too, and he never lost faith. He had stage 4 cancer, which we can say now he was diagnosed last January. It was all over his body. He beat it. Like, it's in remission. Him and I would spend a lot of time and just to see. I just want to see how he's doing. I'd go visit him during the pandemic because he moved back down here from New York to Fairfax. I'm sorry, not Fairfax, Arlington. And he's just positive the whole time. He never once, even though in the face of someone saying, "Hey, you got stage 4 cancer," that dude never blinked ever. And I always consider that. He never blinked in the fact that he was shook by it. He's like, I'm going to beat it. He goes, I can beat this like I beat everything else. And this dude did. It's amazing. You just got to watch his TED Talk and you can see that why he's that guy has taught me that you can, as bad as things can be, there's always a way out, right? And there's always a positive outcome, and you can find a solution. And it might be dark, right? But it's whatever it is in your head. But, he had been through all of it. He's beaten it. So I draw my inspiration from Justin Constantine. And that's who probably is my most inspirational individual that I've worked with over the years.
That's huge. And that's the essence of this show is we all have dark places, but it's about getting up, putting one foot in front of the other. I joke about, I quote Dory, just keep swimming. Right. Nick Baer, his book is Go One More, or 25 hours in a day, going one more. Whatever it is, get up and keep going. And people like Justin, I've heard him speak before. I think I met him at one of your BourBiz events. I can't remember. It was either there or it was somewhere in DC, I know. But that you really do. You feed off. Then there's people that are inspirational and have the influential speakers, but then there's the ones that you just feed off of because they're genuine and because you can just man, I can get energy from them. And I would agree. I obviously haven't worked with him as close as you, but I could definitely feel that from him.
Yeah, he's a great American, and if you ever want, I tell people just go watch any of his, go Google him. Go look at his YouTube videos, go watch the TED Talk, and there's a million videos on him. The times he's spoken. Even on his website, I think it's Justin Constantine or the ConstantineGroup.com. I forgot what it is, but yeah, you can find his information. Just watch it. And hear him. And he's just He's incredible. So it's been a great coincidence that he walked into my life while I was teaching a course. I was teaching at the Entrepreneurial Bootcamp for Veterans, the NatCon. I teach GovCon for those classes for veterans that transition. And he walked into my class. I had never met him before. And he walked into my class, and then he asked a lot of questions. And I was like, great. And I come up to him afterwards, and we just struck up a conversation. He goes, why don't we just go get a beer? And we went and got a beer, and we just talked about, and that's where what BourBiz came from, was we talked about how difficult it was transitioning out of the service, especially when it's abrupt, right? Like what happened with himself and even with me. And that's really where the concept of, we used to call it Veteran Resource Expos, was originally what BourBiz was called. And then we evaluated everything, and we just kind of kept building our foxhole, and we were addressing how do we make things better constantly, because the first event sucked, right? You have 50 people there, and it's whatever. And then you just keep building on it. And, now you look at, when you get to 4-figure numbers on some of the registrations for like DC and, the 600 plus in San Antonio, and we're just doing this in different cities when we can. So it's always an interesting thing to see that. And, but yeah, he's just an awesome human being.
Oh, that's awesome. I just put on the banner. You can see it scrolling down here.
Yeah.
If you're looking for that, that's where you can find his information. And it really is. He's quite he's got quite the story. And I apologize. I'm distracted. I'm typing it in so everyone else as well. I can teach the course about how it's a myth, but awesome.
So Scott, last week 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, Marty and I were teaching a block of instruction or class on time management. So, looking at everything that you do, and obviously you get zero sleep. You've already admitted that. How do you manage it all? I mean, how do you manage your time to be able to give, whatever percentage you could give to all these different things that you're involved in? How do you do that?
So one of the things that, and I learned this because there were times where I took on too much, and that's like the hardest thing learned, right? You gotta know your limits, right? Because you gotta understand that there's always going to be something you sacrifice. And you gotta remember that, whether it's your health or your sleep, family, etc. So I basically set my standard. And what I mean by that is I set my schedule where I know the times where no matter what happens, I'm spending that with my family. That will never change, right? Every day I have this many hours with my daughters, this many hours with my family, things like that, done. That will never deviate within that time. Once you block that time and you say nothing's going in there, then you can kind of start backwards planning. And then from that point, what I do is, and I can tell you how I do it. So during the day itself, right? Let's just say from certain hours, we'll just say work hours, you know what I mean? That is, my work hours are very specific to putting out fires, answering emails, going to events. That's it, right? I'm actually not doing any work whatsoever in the sense, unless there's an emergency. Don't get me wrong. Okay, there's a work emergency for clients and things like that need to be there, and then I'm going to sit there. It's the evening hours after everything's done with the family that my most productive hours of the day are usually between, let's say, 10 p.m. to about 2 a.m. That's like where I actually get my work done. I'm hitting all things that require any type of analytical mindset where I can read, because there's no distraction. Someone's calling me every 2 seconds. I'm not getting text messages or every stupid chime that comes on that goddamn phone. But, that stuff doesn't happen. So I take that time to do that, right? And I will and I'll know if I need it, but if I need longer time, I'll adjust. But that's it. My productive hours are the evening or the night hours, right? So you got to realize that what I recognize that, yeah, I do give up sleep. I don't sleep well anyways. Doesn't matter. So, but for me, it's amazing when the world isn't knocking on your door, you can get so much done. But I recognize that, right? I'm not going to attempt, like during the day, I'm not going to sit there and block 3 hours to go ahead and write something for a client, because it's just never going to work, because it's the way the world works, right? It's not banker's hours, just the way it is as far as responding. And I always say too, you want to talk from a business mindset, the most important thing you can do, customer service. And I tell every one of the people I work with who work for me, bottom line is, you answer that goddamn email. and you pick up that phone when it rings. I go, I don't care what it is or anything else out there. You respond. I go, and you respond quickly. Now, does that create an expectation? And someone makes fun of me all the time. It does, but that's the expectation you want. You want them to know that they can rely on you and they can get to hold of you. And whether or not, and I'm not saying give the answer right away. My favorite thing in the world is if someone says, hey, this was going on. I'm like, hey, I got your email. I'm going to take a look at it. I'm going to get back to you as soon as possible. Do that. You do anything else? Don't try to answer it right away. Always take a step back, especially if it's something that, it's some type of a work problem, and take time to read it and actually take your chance. Because if not, you're going to, too many mistakes are made because of the fact that they can respond very quickly. Don't make that. Take that step back, especially if you get angry or emotional about shit. My favorite thing in the world is type it out. I hit save draft. I wait an hour. I look at it again. And then I'm like, I'm not going to write that. Because I learned too many times that this is a dangerous thing, especially with all different types of things. And your first inclination, you got to monitor it, especially if you want to be professional.
I mean, that's a great point. I mean, I think that goes back to your military days too, probably, right? The initial report's usually wrong. So it's, that's amazing that you still implement that now. Because, I mean, how many times have we, saved or did that email? Thank God we didn't hit send, right? I do it every day. So it's, that's a good reminder for everyone out there. Sometimes it's best just to take a tactical pause and be quiet and just let the situation develop.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, right? I mean, I know we're getting maybe off topic, but listen, there's no tone in email. That's the biggest problem. It could be so grossly misinterpreted. And we've seen it. I've been on the end of that. And I've also been on the other, both sides of it. Even worse when it comes to text messages and then anything with social media, right? Because everything is under, you're never going to make everybody happy and everyone's just going to attack it. Just be wary of that, right? Everything is digitally recorded nowadays. You will have a complete record in the heat of a moment. It ain't worth it. Who gives a shit? You don't even know who you're fighting with on the internet. So it doesn't matter, right? So don't sit there and, you're not going to change the world with your comment, people. That's all I'm going to say. You're not going to change everything. Like, it's all not going to change. You don't need to make the comment. I've been, I fell for that a couple times, and don't respond. The greatest thing in the world is that block button. Piece them out. You don't need them. Who cares? Boop. See you later. Gone. And then they can't get to you any other way. That's the only way. And that's the biggest problem with social media, is that it you allow people to get involved into your life, and you don't need to, right? So, diminish that presence. People ask me all the time, why is your Instagram private for BourBiz? It's private for a reason. I monitor who comes in there because I want it to be like BourBiz, where it's a guarded account where we can actually have professional individuals on there, and it's all about a respectful environment. You say one dumb shit thing on there, you're out. We're gone. There's no question. We have a couple administrators on there too that do it. We won't let you in, but we do that for that reason. It's because there's nothing to hide behind it, but I just don't want toxic people in there. So there's no reason. And I don't care. The numbers grow. I don't care, about those kind of numbers, but even on LinkedIn and things like that, that doesn't bother me from a public perspective. It's just me, but from an organization standpoint where I'm putting out information and it could be commented on. No, we want that to be protected. We want people to be respectful in that environment.
Yeah. No, that's huge. And it's kind of like what Mark Manson talks in his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, is outrage porn. That social media outrage porn. It's a lot of it just out there just to piss you off. And then what? What has that done to your decision making? Narrow those decisions you need to make to what's truly important, and execute from there. And so those are some of the things that I've brought. I've only been retired now 6 months, but those are some of the things that I've brought from the military to here. So my question to you, Scott, is what are some of those touchstones, those things where you said, I learned that as a E2, E5, O2, that is now that I carry with me and I directly can attribute to my success where I am today?
I think, and I will say this from a military standpoint, man, have pride in everything you do, right? Own, even if it's mopping that goddamn floor. People might say, oh, full of shit. No, let me tell you something. My floor would look so good. Man, when I had to buff that thing looked like, you have that pride because, number one, if you put that kind of intensity into a task like that, it means something to you, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what's important. Set the goals for yourself, but have pride in what you do, even if it's the lowest thing. It also teaches respect people who have to do that shit every day outside of it, right? Like I want to teach my kids and my family and everybody else. It teaches you a certain level. So I don't care if it's taking the trash out. I don't care if it's doing that. There are no shortcuts, man. You need to have pride in what you do. Don't fucking cut corners, because let me tell you something, it ain't going to work, right? Cutting corners gets you in more trouble than you can imagine. We all know that too. And especially, listen, we have a zero-sum game in the military. I'm talking about like when we're at war, zero-sum. You can't fuck up. People die, right? There's no shortcuts in that. Now on the ground, the situation, and we all know the situation changes rapidly, right? And we have to adjust to that. And we adjust fire, and we do what we can do in order to get out of that, and to especially protect and save our people. But you can't be taking shortcuts, man. You don't take shortcuts when you do PCCs and PCIs before you roll out the gate, right? Because if you miss some shit, and let's just say your load plan's fucked up and something happens and you got to do that, all that, there's a million things that can go wrong. You don't do that. So it's the same thing with business. If you show that kind of pride in your work, right, at least you know that you've done it right. Now, don't think that everyone's going to appreciate it, right? Because you're always going to have horrible people you got to deal with in life. They're just really sad people out there, right? You're never going to change those people. But for you, it will always give you a sense of satisfaction. No, you know what? I did it right. I was pride. It was dressed right dress. It was perfect. I don't care this guy, you know what I mean? Moving on. That's like we said, 80-20 rule. There's always going to be 20% assholes out there. But if you did everything right, the 80% will appreciate it and look to fight for that 80% and just move on from that 20%. You're never going to change them.
Huge. I like that. That goes back to kind of what we have in first stanza of the Ranger Creed. Is I'll always endeavor to pull the prestige, honor, and higher esprit de corps of my Ranger regiment. It's the same lesson. You're taking that, and now you're instead of my Ranger regiment, it's actually in my work, in what I do, 100% and then some. So there's these things that we learn in the Ranger Creed, the NCO Creed. There's a reason why we have these, and we carry them forward with us, as long as they're not just words on a wall that sit behind your desk underneath an American flag and a lamp all day looking at James Felts. Kidding. But
I see it.
Yeah, but as long as they're not.
His shoulder is that ham hock's covering it, man. You gotta up a little bit.
We all can't be Marty Martinez hiding behind the hidden screen or green screen.
So I'm intel behind me. I can't show it to everybody. But it goes back to that be no do leadership, especially if you're in the military. James is huge on that. He brought that back for me, because as we're talking about our courses and what we're teaching, it's like, well, it's about be no do leadership. And I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. That's something that I learned growing up. Scott, you probably learned that in OCS when you were over there in, was it 211 or whatever, Fort Benning or whatever. We harped on that, and I think that those are some of the lessons you can take forward with you.
Absolutely. Like I said, I wish everybody would join the military. I think they would learn a lot from it. And, just from a character building standpoint, it's required, right? It's necessary. Now, it may not be for everybody. I understand that. But, it's something that, it's something that people should be very well aware of. And like, it does have so many benefits. And yes, there's risk. Don't get me wrong. We all know what the Super Bowl means for us, right? I mean, it means that you may not be coming back. But, not everybody gets to go to the Super Bowl. So if you don't deploy, don't be, then we talked about this earlier. Don't be like, like you didn't get your time in. You still serve, right? Listen, are we always going to have a different feeling? Yes, because the ones that are out there, it sucked, man. It was hard going down range in some cases, right? But don't think that just because you missed it, first off, you never know when the next one's going to be anyway. So don't think you're missing anything, right? And I had a very specific friend. It just was a horrible story. And the end of it was he missed the 03 deployment when we went 03, 04 in the invasion. We all came back. You know how it is. Everyone's got the combat pass and they got all these boards now. And some of them got some V devices on there and everyone's telling fucking stories. And we're at the bar and oh my God, we're beating our chest and shit. And this dude just couldn't get it out of his head. He had to go. And he volunteers for a MIT team. And in 06. And he wound up doing that MIT. First off, he was in the worst situation. I actually found him while I was in country because I was getting really alarming emails from him. And he was living outside of the wire with the Iraqi police in their barracks. And they tried to kill him the first night, even with the fire guard. They tried to stab him to death. And then like he had to witness, we all know about, like we joke around about what happens on Thursdays. They brought in like a 10-year-old boy to him. and like there was horrific screaming, and like he's like, I got to go in there. And this guy was a youth minister when he's growing up, right? And then he's like, I'm going to go in there and kill these fuckers. And he was gone. By the time I got to him, he was gone. Like because I came in, I remember I took a convoy up. I found where he was, and my job at the time allowed me to do that. So I convoyed all the way up to find him. He was outside of Taji, and I went outside of Taji. We found him, and he was in the city, and he was just, you see it, and like that 1,000-yard stare, and he was just fucking gone. And when he came back, again, I'm not saying any names, but he tried to kill his wife, his kids. He lost his mind. He was blackout drunk when it happened. Wound up in the psych ward. All those things, all these terrible things that happened. And now I think he's a janitor. And he was a major with 2 degrees, and he can't hold down a job besides that now. So yeah, I mean, I'd say the reason I'm saying that is like, be proud of your service, because it could be the other aspect. Don't have that fear of missing out bullshit that they talk about, because listen, you'll answer that call if you need to when the time comes, right? We understand that. And we all did, right? When the time come, we went. But don't base your entire life on it, right? You know what I mean? We can't do that. Now, it could be a driven life where you I want to serve others after serving the military because of what I expect. I get that. But don't base everything on that, people. It's not a good trait, especially after there's so much more to life once you get out. So just keep it on. Use that as a foundation. Use that as a character building thing, obviously, but don't live your life by that whole thing. It's just, there's so much more out there.
I think it's a great segue to our final question of the show as we're reaching the top of the hour. We'll give you 2 minutes to answer. You've served and you sacrificed, as we all have. You've missed Christmases. You've done so much. So freedom means something different for all of us as veteran and combat veterans. And so we ask you, Scott Davidson, what does freedom mean to you?
Freedom means to me that I can walk outside today and after this podcast. Well, this podcast is freedom to me. You and I are exchanging free ideas without scrutiny. We can talk without the fear that someone's going to come kick our door and kill us at 3:00 in the morning because we spoke our mind. Freedom to me is knowing that even if you're weak, you're protected, right? Because even those that can't stand up for themselves know in a free society, there's always going to be good people that watch out for them and serve them, right? Which is why we have, the 75th, why we have Ranger regiments, and we have special forces units, and we have a standing army, and we have all these things like police officers and everything else, because they're there to protect you guys, right? Because unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of weak people. So freedom to me shows in a well-established society that clearly shows that we can practice and openly discuss free ideas. And if you don't like it, that's fine. That's your right. But that's the best part about it. So you don't have to do it. But we have the ability to do so. And the truth is, Marty and James, we're not going to be killed tonight because we just talked about it. That to me is freedom.
That's awesome. It's a great answer. I love it. I love that everyone has such a different take, but they're all awesome. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming on the show and being our featured legend this week. And
in other people's mind, not mine. If you want to have a legend, we can go drink at the bar one day, but it's got to be vodka and a happy chill. We're going to go down. I'll show you what a legend can do. That's the Russian German roots in me. But anything else besides that, I am not going to promise anything.
So if you're looking to connect with the BourBiz, it's scrolling on the bottom right now. That's a huge event. I've personally been to a couple of these. They're amazing. And that's where you can find Scott at these running around with the team, and you can also find people like Justin who's scrolling down there and hear their story. These are the legends, because the reason they're legends is because they're coming on and they're willing to share their story in order to help others that may be in a dark place and they need to look and they can find this show and say, you know what? I can connect with that guy. That guy was a captain. Last week was an E5. The other one was there. So that's what we want. The biggest thing we can ask for everybody to do is go to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe so that we can get the word out. We can beat that algorithm and let other people know, because there may be a veteran that's not willing to talk, but they can watch these in the private of their own home and go like, you know what? Okay, that guy Scott, he resonated with me because he's seen some shit and he's still successful. Stephen Kuhn from last week, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we ask. So Scott, thanks for coming on the show. And I'm gonna put you in the green room. But first, James and I want to definitely thank you for your service. So
thank you. I appreciate it, gentlemen. It was an honor. Thank you.
Thanks. Bam.
I knew you had to get it up big there.
Great episode. I really enjoy.
Wow.
Scott. I've got a chance to talk with Scott a couple of times, but never this in depth, and so it was amazing.
Wow. And every time you learn, and you can see that the sense of pride, and a sense of service to others through his just a conversation, and he's real. No edits. He's real. He's a real deal. You get what you see. He is what he says he is.
Yeah, and he was just in San Antonio last week at BourBiz, which leads into who do we have next week coming on the show that's also in San Antonio? I believe you're in a coaching class.
I think it's like an Instagram legend, Soraya.
Soraya Goodall. Yeah, I served with her. I had the honor of serving with her in 25th Infantry and 2nd Brigade Warrior. So she's going to be on the show next week, and we're going to listen to her story because she's unique. She's still actually in right now. She's got her own business, and we're going to look how she's kicking down doors. So look forward to it again. Please go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Lounge with Legends. Like and subscribe. Help us get the word out because it's not about us. Never has been, never will be, as James says. And I appreciate it. So thank you for your service. Thanks for tuning in.
You've been watching the Lounge with Legends show on E360 TV, countering the narrative that veterans are all broken misfit toys. Veterans are the lifeblood of American freedom. Serving in harsh situations, coupled with their training, have forged them into some of the most resilient and capable leaders in the world. And that's where we come in, celebrating the success stories, taking you on a journey of transformation from military to business. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll be back soon. But find us on Facebook at Lounge with Legend or at JTF214. Till next time.